Good afternoon. Welcome to the New York City Council hearing for the Committee on Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Intergroup Relations. Please silence all cell phone electronic devices and reminder, do not approach the dais. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Thank you so much for your patience. We were just waiting for some people to come. So good afternoon again. I am Deputy Speaker Natasha Williams, Chair of the Committee on Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Relations. Welcome to our oversight hearing on commemorating Juneteenth and honoring burial sites of formerly enslaved African Americans. In addition to our oversight topic today, we will be hearing the following legislation. Intro number 220, sponsored by Councilmember Hanks and Rita Joseph in relation to the identification of formerly enslaved African American burial sites. Resolution 82, sponsored by Councilmember Farias, celebrating the Feast of San Gennaro and the Ferragosto Festival annually in September to honor the contributions of Italian immigrants and Italian Americans to the cultural, political, and economic fabric of the city of New York. Resolution number 424, sponsored by Councilmember Kevin Riley, declaring June 5th as Kappa Alpha Psi Day in the city of New York to recognize the fraternity's longstanding tradition of fostering brotherhood, academic achievement, leadership development, and community service. Resolution 440, also sponsored by Councilmember Farias, declaring April 28th as Willie Colon Day in the city of New York to honor the multi-talented trombone player, band leader, composer, and producer who was a New York City pioneer of Latin music and a beloved salsa legend, as well as the following legislation that I have sponsored, Resolution 450, declaring May 10th as Maria Antonia K Day in the city of New York to honor her enduring role in supporting and celebrating the Puerto Rican community and in preserving and uplifting its rich cultural heritage and traditions. First, let me invite Councilmember Hanks and Councilmember Joseph to speak about their bill. Majority Whip Hanks.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, Chair Dr. Williams, and thank you for everyone else for joining us today for today's hearing. Intro 220 is this legislation is deeply personal, historically necessary, and long overdue. Across New York City, African burial grounds connected to formerly enslaved Black New Yorkers have too often been erased, neglected, or forgotten. These are not simply burial sites, they are sacred places tied to families. And let me be clear, this is not Black history, this is American history. The formerly enslaved men, women, and children buried in these grounds helped build this country under unimaginable conditions. They deserve dignity and recognition. As the representative of Staten Island's North Shore, the issue is especially meaningful to me. From Sandy Ground, the oldest Black settlement on the East Coast, to the former Cherry Lane Cemetery burial place of Benjamin Prine, recognized as the last person born into slavery on Staten Island. Now paved over as a strip mall, this city carries an important African American history that must be preserved. The painful reality that burial grounds connected to African Americans were simply paved over and forgotten makes it very clear why this legislation matters. I want to thank the scholars, the historians, the archaeologists, and preservation advocates doing the important work of ensuring these stories and the people connected to them are never forgotten. I want to recognize Dr. Elizabeth Mead of the Professional Archaeologists of New York City, Heather Quinlan, who is here today to testify, president of the Northeast Corridor Freedom Network, and the many individuals committed to preserving this history. Intro 220 is about recognition, education, accountability, and the preservation of those sacred spaces for future generations. Our history cannot be paved over. I want to thank my co-sponsor, Councilmember Rita Joseph, for joining me in doing this important work. Thank you very much to this committee. Thank you very much, Chair Dr. Williams, and thank you everyone who's helping sign on to this important legislation. Thank you.
And before Councilmember Joseph goes, I also just wanted to add that this hearing was because of her advocacy to make sure that we were talking about African American burial sites. So I just want to thank her for her advocacy.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you, Deputy Speaker Williams, for your leadership in holding this important hearing today. Burial grounds represent an important part of acknowledgement and remembrance of the city's history. In 2021, the city produced a report that included historical and archaeology research. At European Contact, the land, the Flatbush African Burial Ground and the Bedford Avenue church site occupied, was inhabited by Canarsie, a band of Munsee speaking Lenape who are ancestors of today's Delaware Nation, Delaware tribe of Indians, Stockbridge, Munsee Community Band of Mohicans, and the Shinnecock Nation. In 1800, between 70 and 80% of all Flatbush families enslaved at least one person. When enslaved people in Flatbush died, most were permitted to be buried in the cemetery of Flatbush Reformed Church, which was founded in 1654, and was the only church in Flatbush for a long period. At an unknown time, as early as the 17th century, after the Dutch arrived, a separate burial ground for people of African ancestry was established on the land of Flatbush Reformed Church, owned at what is now the intersection of Church and Bedford Avenue. Historical documents established that it was used for new burials through at least 1810 and possibly through 1840. Now more than ever, we have the responsibility to preserve burial grounds citywide, focusing on three important pillars: importance of burial grounds, importance of preservation, and ensuring council continues oversight. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Joseph and Majority Whip Hanks. Let me just say a few words about my resolution, which celebrates the work of Maria Antonia Kay, finally known to everyone as Chonita. Born in Puerto Rico, she came to New York City as a teenager and began working as a factory seamstress while designing, making, and selling dresses through her own home based business. Eventually, she was able to buy the building where she lived and still lives on the south side of Williamsburg. And in 1973, she incorporated a Caribbean baseball team in her now famous Caribbean Social Club, popularly known as Tonitas. Her club has long served as the social and cultural center for the Latino residents of her neighborhood, and occasionally for those from outside the neighborhood, like Bad Bunny. You might have seen her featured in her friend's 2026 Super Bowl halftime show when she brought a bit of Brooklyn to Bad Bunny's tribute to their beloved mutual Puerto Rican culture and heritage. Tonita is truly one of a kind. Now, let me say a few words about my colleague, Councilmember Riley's resolution declaring January 5th as Kappa Alpha Psi Day in New York City. Over the past several years, the Council has passed resolutions celebrating the work of the National Panhellenic Council, which is a coordinating body of Black Greek letter organizations of college-educated women and men committed to community awareness and action through educational, economic, and cultural service activities. The four sororities and the five fraternities that make up the National Panhellenic Council, or affectionately known as the Divine Nine. So far, the council has recognized the work of three of the sororities, all of which have city council members as members: Delta Sigma Theta, which is my sorority, and which I am very proud to be a member of; Sigma Gamma Rho, which is Councilmember Joseph's sorority, and which she is equally proud, I'm sure, to be a member of; and Alpha Kappa Alpha, which, as many know, our former speaker was an AKA, as well as Councilmember Farias. However, Kappa Alpha Psi is the first fraternity we have recognized. Not surprisingly, Councilmember Riley is a proud member. So 4 down, 5 to go. And finally, a few words about our oversight topic. In addition to the African Burial Ground National Monument, the federally operated visitor center with exhibitions and outside memorial located on Broadway near City Hall, burial sites of formerly enslaved African Americans have been found throughout New York City. They include the Old Town of Flushing Burial Ground, Flatbush African Burial Ground, Harlem African Burial Ground, Inwood African Burial Ground, Hunts Point Slave Burial Ground, Cherry Lane Cemetery in Staten Island, and the site of the Brooklyn Public Library's New Lots Library. Each of these sites have long histories, sometimes dating to before the Civil War and sometimes dating to before the Revolutionary War. Each of these histories is worth telling, remembering, and preserving. And without thoughtful and intentional preservation, these important sites risk being neglected, forgotten, or even destroyed as the city continues to change, grow, and develop. We look forward to learning more about some of these histories in this hearing. We also look forward to discussing how to preserve them. The bill that Council members Hanks and Joseph introduced will support new efforts to find, document, and educate the public about these and other burial sites of formerly enslaved African Americans still waiting to be rediscovered. I will now pause because I know Councilmember Banks has one of these sites in his district and wanted to share a few words.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, Chair. Good afternoon. I speak today in support of Intro 2020 legislation when enacted, which will require the Department of Cultural Affairs to maintain a list of all known burial sites of formerly enslaved African Americans citywide. In addition to also developing and implementing a plan to locate any currently unmarked burial sites for formerly enslaved African Americans citywide. This bill will also require the DCLA to notify and elected officials when a burial site has been located in their district, in addition to developing an educational campaign to inform the city residents about these sites, while additionally creating and maintaining an interactive map of the burial sites on the DCLA website. For my district, this is not only practical, but it's personal. The New Lots branch of the Brooklyn Public Library in East New York, in the East New York district of the 42nd Council District, which I represent, is currently undergoing a multi-million-dollar renovation. This project is not simply the rebuilding of a library building, but it's a building that will continue to serve as a transformational representation of education and culture of East New York and the surrounding community. As one of the largest libraries in the Brooklyn Public Library system, the New Lots Library has for decades been a central resource for seniors, students, parents, immigrants, job seekers, and lifelong learners in the 42nd Council District. And for many residents, this library serves as a safe space, a classroom, a gathering place, and a gateway for unending possibilities. What many may not know is that this library sits on what is considered by many to be hallowed ground, a former burial ground for enslaved African Americans and their ancestors. Preservation and ensuring care and dignity for the handling of these sites, such as the burial grounds under and around the New Lots Library branch, must be the utmost importance for this and every other such site across the city. In East New York, a community that is made up of majority black and brown residents, telling the stories of our ancestors is not only important, it's essential. The streets of East New York pay homage to many former slave owners, and that is not our story. I want to see, that's not the story I want to see reflected for this district, a district which has often been underserved, and where the media is often quick to focus on negative stories. We must educate the community on where they come from and the importance of the contributions of their ancestors. We must also recognize the deeper truth that below this sacred ground lies the remains of free and enslaved African people from the Revolutionary era, individuals whose lives, struggles, and contributions were too often overlooked and left untold. Their presence calls us to act with care, respect, and purpose. Preserving this burial ground is not optional, it is a responsibility, and it's an act of acknowledgement. It's an act of justice. It's an act of reverence for those who come before us and whose resilience helps shape the very community we serve today. This renovation project represents a powerful opportunity to do just that. By incorporating a dedicated space within the library to honor this history, we ensure that future generations will not only learn within these walls, but also remember. We transform this library into a place where education and remembrance walk hand in hand. Just as important, this project reflects the voices of the community. Through extensive outreach from residents, from seniors to young people, and from families to those often unheard, have made it clear this must remain a library first, but one that also serves as an intergenerational hub rooted in cultural recognition and shared history. And beyond this site, we must take broader action. The proposed measures to identify, document, and document and educate the public about burial grounds of formerly enslaved people across the city are critical. We cannot protect what we don't have knowledge of. We cannot teach what we do not preserve. I'm proud to support this legislation and this project and look forward to seeing them both brought to successful completion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Banks. And finally, rounding out our hearing today, we will also get a glimpse of how some of our brilliant arts and cultural organizations are commemorating Juneteenth by providing programming open to all New Yorkers. Starting in the early days of COVID-19 pandemic, as daily Zoom calls and continuing now as several times a week Zoom calls, Culture at 3 is a space for the leaders of New York City's nonprofit cultural institutions to connect and share resources and support. 3 years ago, in February 2023, the Anti-Racism Working Group of Culture at 3 made a request for all arts and cultural organizations on the Zoom call to put on a Juneteenth event. Ever since, and thanks to Executive Director Regina Bain, the Louis Armstrong House Museum has continued to provide information about the arts and cultural community events commemorating Juneteenth, including upcoming events for 2026. The Louis Armstrong House Museum website says this. On June 19, 1865, enslaved African Americans in Texas learned that they were free 2.5 years after the issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, has been celebrated in the African American community for more than 150 years. Juneteenth is a day to reflect on the past and look to the future with action today. On such commemoration, now in its 6th year, is a joint venture of the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance and the Bronx Arts Ensemble, led by violinist and executive director Judith Insel. The annual event is located close to the enslaved African burial ground, which was consecrated on Juneteenth, 2021 by the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance and New York City Parks. This year, the festival event is expecting 1,000 attendees. And we have been joined by another one of our lovely guests who also would like to provide some remarks, Public Advocate Jumani Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned, my name is Jumani Williams. I'm Public Advocate for the City of New York. Excuse me. I want to thank Chair Williams and the members of the Committee on Cultural Affairs for holding this important hearing. New York City's and our entire country's vast wealth was built on the backs of human beings kidnapped and forced to labor against their will. Although New York emancipated enslaved African Americans earlier than the country as a whole, the reverberations of that heinous crime unfortunately live on today. Black New Yorkers still hold less wealth, are more heavily policed, have less access to high quality services, and are leaving the city at a higher than average rates. We are living in a pretty concerning and dark moment in our country's history. We are seeing in real time state and national efforts to prevent the teaching of Black history, including the history of enslavement and simultaneously disenfranchisement of Black Americans by redistricting our power away. In these uncertain times, it is more important than ever that New York City's government leads in educating ourselves and our neighbors on the history of enslavement, which is the history of America. For that reason, I strongly encourage the Committee on the Council to pass Councilmember Banks' bill, Intro 220, to identify and publicize the locations of burial sites holding formerly enslaved African Americans. Teaching real history means highlighting and uncovering brutal truths that have been lost, which often means deliberately hidden. The burial ground at 290 Broadway, which holds the bodies of close to 15,000 enslaved Africans, was recovered just 35 years ago. It took over a decade to open an official monument commemorating that spot. Intro 220 will ensure that the city works quickly and proactively to fully account for such burial sites across our city and honor those that the recorders of our history too often choose specifically to forget. Councilmember Hanks' important legislation bills on our city's past leadership in this area, including the passage of Local Law 94 of 2024, which I championed in order to place an informational sign marking the site of New York's first slave market. Intro 220 is a vital step towards ensuring New Yorkers are equipped to understand how slavery shaped our city. In order to learn the past, we have to first acknowledge it. I also want to highlight the fact that there is a chain at the bottom of the foot of the Statue of Liberty. They put it there as this was supposed to be a gift to celebrate the freedom that was given, but they didn't want it, and so they hid it on the foot. It's still there for anyone who wants to see it. It's also important to highlight the bright spots in our past as well as our present. To that end, I'd also like to express support for bills from Councilmembers Farias, Riley, and Williams. Resolution 82 will celebrate the immense contributions of Italian New Yorkers by recognizing the Feast of San Gennaro and the Ferragosto Festival by declaring April 28th as Willie Colon Day. Resolution 440 highlights the musician and community leaders' resounding cultural impact here and across the globe. Designating January 5th as Kappa Alpha Psi Day, as Councilmember Riley's Resolution 424 does, will rightfully spotlight one of the nation's oldest Black Greek letter organizations and its many contributions to our city. And last, but certainly not least, I'm proud to support Resolution 450, creating Maria Antonia K Day on June 20th to honor Donita's 50-plus years effort to uplift the Puerto Rican community in Williamsburg and beyond. I just want to end with saying anti-Blackness is insidious. What is happening now in removing history and even representatives in the South is not a byproduct of MAGA. It is the purpose of MAGA. It is the intention. It is what people want to see happen. And anti-Blackness is so insidious, even if you overcome and get into positions you're supposed to, people are now using the word DEI as if you were not capable of being in those positions. So I always want to talk about it as a specific thing because unfortunately it exists in every space in other communities when you're talking about women or Asian or Latino brothers and sisters, immigrant anti-Blackness is always there. So when I take my oldest daughter to pick up some flowers for Mother's Day and we have to hear in Spanish that two coloreds just walked in, or my then 3-year-old comes home and says that someone couldn't play with her because she was brown, it is anti-Blackness that still exists. It is painful. People, we are not making this up. And I want to say Black and mean Black and not have people look at me as if we're making things up. So I'm very excited about what this council is doing now in general, but in particular, right now, where people are trying to reverse the gains and pretend like that's not happening. I think this is more important than ever. I also want to leave with saying no one is responsible for the system we're in now, whatever your color, race, creed. But I think everyone is responsible so that my daughters can get a different system than the one we have now. Thank you.
Thank you. And to piggyback on what the public advocate said, in an era when some localities and states are moving to wipe education about Black history from public school curriculums, from university courses, and from public discourse, it is important that here in New York City, celebrations of Black history and culture remain vibrant and accessible. I want to just acknowledge some of my colleagues on the committee who are present, Councilmember Hudson, Maloney, who is here, Lewis, who is on Zoom, Hank, Stevens, Joseph, and Banks. I also want to thank my office, Priyanka Shaki, committee staff, Alejandro, Regina, and Carolina. And with that, I will just remind people from the public who wish to testify in person today that you must fill out an appearance card, which is located on the desk of the Sergeant at Arms at the back. Please fill out the slip, even if you have already registered to testify in advance. When you are called, please limit your testimony to 2 minutes, whether you are testifying in person or on Zoom. I'm also going to ask my colleagues to limit their questions and comments to 5 minutes. It is my pleasure to call our first special panel of experts regarding African American burial sites in New York City, Matthew Riley, Herbert Seegernet, you have to tell me if I said that right, and Elizabeth Seeger Seniorate, and Elizabeth Mead, and Dr. Asia Lance. Yeah, you can just restate your name for the record, and whoever wants to start first.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Matthew Riley, and it's an honor to be here today to speak in support of Bill 220 as a professor of anthropology at the City College of New York and the CUNY Graduate Center, a board member of the Professional Archaeologists of New York City, and of course, as a New Yorker. As an archaeologist of the African diaspora with over 15 years of experience working in the United States, the Caribbean, and West Africa, I, in no uncertain terms, fully support the spirit of this bill. You'll soon hear from my colleague, Dr. Mead, who will describe the incredibly rich history of sacred Black burial sites across our city and the ongoing threats they currently face. But in my very short time, I implore you to consider the unparalleled opportunity that this bill offers in the midst of a crisis unfolding beyond the borders of our city, and encourage you to lean on the expertise of city archaeologists and community stakeholders. Black burial grounds continue to be neglected and threatened across the country and throughout the African diaspora. Development and climate change, paired with a lack of proper and enforceable legislation, often renders communities powerless when sacred sites are rediscovered, disturbed, or destroyed. In Barbados, where I've conducted archaeological research for over 15 years, a plantation burial ground was uncovered through academic research over a decade prior to the rediscovery of the African burial ground right here in Lower Manhattan. Currently, a massive monument is under construction at this Caribbean site that promises to be a global beacon for honoring such sacred spaces. The Heritage Park is in part inspired by our nearby national monument at the African burial ground. I bring this up because sites of the African diaspora, especially burial grounds, are receiving heightened attention on a global scale. And yet, they remain some of the poorest documented and least protected, including in the United States and our city. Knowledge, awareness, and transparency are of course paramount to the proposed bill, as it can play an outsized role in how sacred sites of the African diaspora are documented. We should remember that federal legislation, specifically the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, led to the rediscovery of the African burial ground just a stone's throw away from where we sit today. My international colleagues regularly point to this legislation as a source of inspiration, lamenting that no such law exists in other African diasporic contexts. While the legislation required that archaeologists assess the site, it couldn't prevent the initial unethical treatment of human remains as archaeologists raced through the work under pressure from developers. It was the concerted effort of stakeholders and descendant community members who then demanded respect and justice for those interred at the site and thus reoriented the research process. This new bill, 220, will bring community members, specialists like archaeologists, and city officials together to ensure that similar tragedies can be avoided in the future. This bill has the potential to be a model for legislation around the country and the world. With that said, I implore you to harness the expertise of specialists who know these sites and their histories, who work closely with communities, and who can offer guidance on not only how to properly acknowledge these sites, but protect them for future generations and honor those interred in the soils beneath our feet. With that in mind, I close with a short statement from PANIC member and New York City archaeologist, Dr. Jessica McLean, speaking on how collaborations can and should function under this bill. She says, and I quote, "The bill proposes that the Department of Cultural Affairs be responsible for maintaining the proposed list of all known burial sites of formerly enslaved Africans citywide. The Landmarks Preservation Commission and its Department of Archaeology already maintain lists and maps of archaeological sites in the city, including burial grounds, and are charged by the city with the regulation and safekeeping of these sites and resources. PANIC strongly recommends that the Landmarks Preservation Commission be the city agency responsible for these lists of all known burial sites in the proposed bill, as we have the requisite structure and expertise already in place." It's calling for more formal collaboration between these offices, end quote. And with that, I thank you for all your time, and I turn things over to my colleague, Herbert Signoret.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before the committee. My name is Herbert Signoret, and I'm the Director for Academic Advising at the Coram Power School at the City College of New York. I am also the Associate Director for the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History, and it is in this capacity that I lend my support to Bill 220. I have over 25 years' experience working on archaeological sites in both New York City and New York State and the Caribbean. I am also a member of the Society for Historical Archaeology and the Society of Black Archaeologists. My interest in archaeology as a profession began with the rediscovery of the African burial ground, not too far away from here, during the construction of the Foley Square Federal Building at 290 Broadway. It was then that I truly understood the power of material culture in giving a voice to communities that had long been silenced. The rediscovery of the African burial ground highlighted the importance that enslavement played in the Northeast and in New York in particular. It also demonstrated the significance of the site to the descendant community, whose role in saving it from destruction cannot be ignored. I will leave further discussion of New York City sites to Dr. Mead and focus instead briefly on Seneca Village. Seneca Village was established in the 1820s as a free black settlement. Documentary sources indicate that by the mid-1850s, it was a five-ring community with a population of over 260 people. Approximately two-thirds of the residents were of African descent, while the remaining residents were primarily European immigrants and Irish. The community included a school and three churches. This thriving community was eventually destroyed to make way for the creation of Central Park through one of the earliest uses of eminent domain to acquire private land in New York City. An August 11, 1871 article in the New York Herald mentioned the discovery of two burials in the newly created Central Park near 85th Street and 8th Avenue. This article described one individual presumed to be white in detail, listing her name, age, and gender, while identifying the other individual only as Negro, decomposed beyond recognition. There is no mention that a thriving community had existed there only 15 years earlier. Silencing of this community's history is evident in this omission. Prior to the creation of the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History, Cynthia Copeland and Grady Turner curated an exhibit at the New York Historical Society. Much of their work was based on the book The Park and the People, which included a chapter on Seneca Village. Central to the exhibit was the role of the village's three churches, the AME Zion Church, the African Union Church, and the All Angels Church. All three churches had burial grounds associated with the lots they purchased. The Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History conducted archaeological excavation in the Seneca Village site during the summer of 2011. Preliminary research on the site had begun more than 10 years earlier through documentary research. This research included a study of tax record, court records, census data, church records, and historical maps that identified the location of the settlement's features, such as houses, churches, barns, and cemeteries. Before excavation began, the Institute employed non-invasive archaeological methods, primarily ground-penetrating radar, which was used to identify anomalies below the ground surface. The survey indicated that there were still remains of the settlement. As earlier stated, there were three churches associated with Seneca Village, and each church had an associated cemetery. However, not all the burials were of people who lived in Seneca Village. The Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History, out of concern and respect for the descendant community, decided not to excavate in the vicinity where burials were located. This much-needed bill will help advance several of the goals of the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History, including commemoration and memorization, public education and awareness, and community engagement. The Institute aims to work collaboratively with community members, scholars, and local boards to ensure that descendants and the broader public are involved in the storytelling process, that a voice is restored to a community that was silenced.
Good afternoon, and I share my colleagues' thanks to the committee for allowing us to speak to you today. I am Dr. Elizabeth D. Mead, an urban historical archaeologist who's been documenting the cemeteries of New York City for more than 2 decades. As an archaeologist with the consulting firm AKRF, I have in recent years served as the lead archaeologist for the archaeological investigation of the Inwood Sacred Site, a burial place for enslaved Africans and indigenous ceremonial site, and I currently serve as the deputy principal investigator for the archaeological investigation of the Harlem African Burial Ground. My doctoral dissertation, completed through the CUNY Graduate Center's anthropology program, involved the documentation of more than 500 current and former cemeteries across the 5 boroughs, more than half of which were redeveloped with or without the removal of the human remains buried within. New York City's archaeologists have been documenting cemeteries associated with enslavement and the African diaspora for decades. It is a common misconception that the African burial ground in Lower Manhattan was inadvertently discovered by construction crews, when in fact it was discovered by archaeologists who were on site looking for traces of the cemetery. A new generation of urban archaeologists is currently working with city agencies, community groups, and descendant communities to reclaim the burial places of enslaved people across New York City, including at the Inwood Sacred Site in the Harlem African Burial Ground in Manhattan, the Flatbush African Burial Ground and Sankofa Park Burial Ground in Brooklyn, the Hunts Point Enslaved Persons Burial Ground and Van Cortlandt Park Enslaved Persons Burial Ground in the Bronx, among others. The Professional Archaeologists of New York City, or PANIC, therefore support this proposed legislation, which will help to increase the public's awareness of the locations of sacred sites and help descendant communities reclaim sacred spaces associated with the remains of their ancestors. Passing legislation that brings these sacred places back into dialogue with present-day New Yorkers is an important first step in righting the wrongs of the past and ending the cycle of violence perpetuated by allowing burial places that were historically disrespected to continue to remain unacknowledged. To paraphrase from my own dissertation, one of the most potent reminders of the horrors of the enslavement of Africans and individuals of African descent in New York City's history is the lack of documentation of their burial places. The burial site that is now known as the New York African Burial Ground is one of the most well-known cemeteries for enslaved people in the modern United States. Its designation as the African Burial Ground may give some the false impression that it was the only site in use for the interment of New York City's enslaved population. However, it was one of many such burial sites. An untold number of burial places for free and enslaved people of African descent were never recorded, and for many others, only limited documentary information is available. New Yorkers of African descent represented between 1/10 and 1/3 of the city's population over time and experienced higher mortality rates in general. And yet, the number of documented cemeteries in use exclusively by individuals of African descent before statewide emancipation in 1827 represents less than 4% of the documented burial places known to have existed. Segregated cemeteries used exclusively for the interment of free and enslaved people of African descent were one of the only cemetery categories identified in my own research for which all sites were redeveloped and none were preserved. As such, the city that never sleeps was quite literally constructed on top of the bones of those whose stolen labor built it. Bills offering legal protection to cemeteries are critical in any city where the combination of increased population density and the fast pace of development frequently results in the discovery of seemingly forgotten or abandoned human remains on construction sites. However, legal protection is even more critical for burial places associated with enslavement, as those sites were often intentionally treated without regard for basic human decency. Colonizing forces in what is now New York City mandated the segregation of cemeteries in 1697 and passed numerous laws in the 18th century that placed restrictions on black funerals designed to prevent resistance against enslavers. These laws restricted funerals for enslaved people to certain times of day, placed limits on the number of mourners allowed to be in attendance, and banned certain funerary customs. These laws also resulted in enslaved people lacking the legal or financial means to protect their ancestors' burial places. Many narratives surrounding enslaved burial places suggest that they were redeveloped after being forgotten. However, I argue that it is more important to say that they were ignored. Outside of the landmarking process, New York City presently has no laws that protect former cemetery sites from as-of-right development on privately owned land until after human remains are disturbed. Similarly, the New York State Unmarked Burial Site Protection Act, which went into effect in 2023, applies only after human bones have been encountered during subsurface activity. New York City environmental review legislation allows for properties to be assigned so-called E-designations pertaining to air quality, hazardous materials, and noise as the result of zoning actions, providing a mechanism to force developers to complete additional pre-construction testing and analysis once a rezoning has gone into effect. However, no such mechanism exists to protect sites with documented archaeological significance, including burial places. The laws in place to protect human remains after they are disturbed rely almost entirely on construction crews to promptly and honestly report that they have encountered human remains or suspected human remains. Therefore, while PANIC is in full support of the proposed legislation, we would also encourage the City Council to explore ways to pass legislation that will at long last provide protection to known burial places before they are disturbed. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak to you today, and we welcome your questions later. Dr. Lands?
I will be brief. Thank you for having us here. My name is Dr. Asia Lands, and I'm an assistant professor of anthropology and Africana studies, currently at Johns Hopkins, but home is New York, and that is where all of my research is based. I currently consult with AKRF on bioarchaeological projects. So I work specifically with human skeletal remains and focus on ancestors who were members of the African diaspora. But I guess the point I want to make is to reinforce that we should be protecting these sites so that people like me are relevant. I've spent the past couple weeks going through the remains of ancestors who were recovered from the Harlem African Burial Ground. And I would prefer that these ancestors never have needed to come out of the ground in the first place. And I would also recommend that we think more broadly about which cemeteries we are protecting. So I think rather than cemeteries with enslaved people, it should be broader, it should be Black, it should be African and African diaspora, something along these lines. Because, you know, as we know, slavery may have ended, but and so because of the history of segregation of Black burial places, it is very likely that there are cemeteries that perhaps post-date enslavement, but are Black cemeteries. Or there are existing cemeteries wherein the Black folks were buried in a different part of it that often ends up being ignored. So yes, I would just like to make the pitch to think about this more broadly and to also, again, think of legislation that stops, you know, developers from disturbing these burial grounds anyway if we know that they existed there. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few things. I wanted to share that the council, we did a Juneteenth package that called on the Commission of Racial Equity to do reparations and truth and reconciliation. And I was texting her as you were speaking because they actually have a current application out. They are recruiting for like researchers to come and work with them. It is a 1.2 million grant. The deadline is coming up pretty quickly, but just encouraging you all because you clearly have the expertise, and a part of why we pass truth and reconciliation and reparations is to uncover the many things that you all are researching, so that the city can acknowledge harm, because there was harm done in Seneca Village. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I will make the connection. I'll work with committee staff to make the connection with Linda Tagani, so you can be connected to the work that we have instructed her commission to do. I also just wanted to acknowledge someone who we have in the room in her official capacity as General Counsel of the New York State Community Commission on Reparations, India Sneed Williams. So people are very interested in this topic. And I'm hoping folks can connect. She can raise her hand so you can see who she is. And hopefully you all can connect with her as well. So my colleague who had to leave, who was the bill sponsor, one of the questions she had, well, actually, you know what? Let me take a step back because this is probably for DCLA. What types of burial places existed for free and enslaved people of African descent? And anyone can answer it.
So in New York City, there were generally three, very loose categories. The first is kind of communal, community-based burial places that were not tied to kinship, not tied to location. So a site like the African Burial Ground here in Lower Manhattan, Flatbush African Burial Ground, kind of a place where anybody was allowed to be interred, where the archaeological evidence of the African burial ground kind of suggests they may have had some freedom to express their own burial customs, traditions, bringing cultural traditions over from Africa, that sort of thing. The second type is less well documented. We know less about it, but it's essentially burial places that would have occurred on private property, on farms, by the enslavers. So they would have interred the people whose stolen labor worked the land on the property. Many of them often maintained family cemeteries as well, and the enslaved people were buried either around the family cemetery, adjacent to the family cemetery, or somewhere else on the property. And then the third kind of general category, as Dr. Lands alluded to, really continues past the period of enslavement, and it's where Formerly enslaved people were interred later in the 19th century. Churches took over the role of a lot of burial practices. There are quite a few AME churches throughout New York that maintain burial places, as Herbert mentioned, in Seneca Village. But it really continues well beyond that. Even the patterns of segregation in New York City burials continues into the 20th century. There are predominantly Black cemeteries that were established to provide burial places to the people who were shut out of the city's other cemeteries. So as Dr. Lands mentioned, it's kind of hard to capture all of the burial places where formerly enslaved people may have been buried because there were so many that were really just more African diaspora related cemeteries rather than being linked specifically to enslavement.
And how are free and enslaved people of African descent prevented from protecting their burial places?
Legally, there were laws that prevented protection. Elsewhere in the city, if there were active stakeholders, family members, people to speak up about protecting a cemetery, about people who owned the land, had rights to the private land, who could prevent a cemetery from being demolished. In the case of the Harlem African Burial Ground, we have documentation from the 1920s when the site was going to be redeveloped as a movie studio. And the movie studio attempted to get title insurance to the property. And initially were told they could not because there had been a cemetery there. And ultimately the legal decision was that because enslaved people could not own land, they did not have any legal rights to the property that the cemetery was built on, and it was allowed to be redeveloped. So that kind of shows that carried well into the 20th century. There was knowledge that the cemetery was there, and it didn't matter. It ended up being a legal court case. Another example is, I always get the name wrong. Hold on, I wrote it down. It has many names. I've kind of consolidated them. The Little Neck Matinacock Hicks Waters Family Cemetery out in Queens. There was a decades-long battle by a family member. This was a cemetery used for both Black and Indigenous people. It gets sometimes categorized as a family cemetery, sometimes categorized as a community cemetery. The history's a little blurry, but essentially the family elder spent decades trying to fight the city from widening Northern Boulevard to eliminate the cemetery. That legal case was essentially lost when that man died, and no one was left to fight. But part of the reason why the city was expanding the road to the north was because there were very wealthy people who resided to the south who did not want to lose part of their property, including a notable state politician. So it was a decades-long battle to essentially protect people's front yards, and private property took precedent. So there are lots of stories similar to that where people tried and were just prevented either because they lacked the money or the resources or the legal standing to protect cemeteries.
And if I could add to that, I mean, a major issue across the country when it comes to Black cemeteries is gentrification. And simply, Black people being prevented from owning land, from owning homes. And once everyone with memory of that space is out of a neighborhood, then the claim can be made, oh, it's been forgotten, and then there can be development, and then they might find some human remains, and who knows what's going to happen next.
Thank you. Which cemeteries associated with enslavement have been documented, and what more can be done to identify and document additional sites?
So I think we've named quite a few that are currently undergoing archaeological analysis, for the last 10 years or more. There are a number that I think are less well known that don't yet have community groups kind of standing up for them yet. My dissertation, I have a map at cemeteriesofnewyorkcity.com, nyc.com, that where anybody who's interested can look for some other examples. There are a number, in addition to Seneca Village, there are a number of AME church cemeteries throughout New York City. There are several late 19th, early 20th century cemeteries, again, kind of larger rural cemeteries that were established for a primarily Black population who were excluded from other cemetery sites. So there's quite a few that are being documented. there's just not a lot of public knowledge of them yet. So this is where a bill like this could really help promote knowledge and encourage people to start to protect these sites. As I mentioned before, the least well documented types of burial places associated with enslavement are the ones that occurred on private land. Enslavers typically did not record or protect the graves of the enslaved people that they interred, even when their own family cemeteries were well protected, sometimes for centuries. So one of the things I'm encouraging people to do more research on is to examine records, property records, census records, and any kinds of documentary records that we can of people who owned well-known, well-documented family cemeteries in New York City who were also enslavers, and to try and figure out if they could have interred enslaved people on their properties and where those properties were.
Yeah, I don't remember who said it, but the comment that perhaps the most egregious harm is the lack of documentation. And I think New York City in general lacks documentation on enslaved Black people in New York City. I don't know, I guess people think that New York City didn't have slaves. I don't really understand. But we just, I don't know, we kind of like gloss over slavery in New York City. And I think there is a narrative that, and I've heard the public advocate say this a ton of times, that somehow slavery was just a product of the South. And we know that not only did bondage occur in New York City, that New York City was the financial arm in many ways of enslavement. And as a city, I don't think that we've done a good job at documenting that. And then documenting, the aftermath of slavery, which many say, still kind of kept us in invisible bondage because of the many laws that not only were passed nationally, but local laws that also allowed for continued segregation and marginalization of Black people in New York City. I think of City of Yes, which we just passed, where we repealed the cabaret law. And that was specifically a racist law that was prohibiting a lot of Black establishments from having certain types of activities because of the fear of white people and Black people partying in Harlem. And so, up until just a few years ago, we're still working to undo a ton of harm. And I really do believe, and I'm hopeful that through our reparations work, our truth and reconciliation work, the fact that the charter mandates required the mayor's office to have a mayor's office of equity and racial justice to produce racial equity plans, that we can start the process of at least telling the truth. Because I don't think we tell the truth in New York City. Councilmember Joseph, I don't know if you have any more questions.
I do. Thank you so much, Chair Williams. So I am part of that story you talk about. So Flatbush African Burial Ground lives in my district on Bedford Avenue in Church, and it was built on. The remains were taken. It was the first public school, then it became a yeshiva. And then in 2019, as I was running for council, we discovered it. A rediscovery of our ancestors. But so many was taken away already. It pains me every time I talk about that, the manipulation of the land, turning up the soil, the digging of the soil of the ancestors. I think we're still working with, I believe, Howard University to get that back. We're in the process of memorializing that space, but it's harm. A lot of harm was done to that space. That's why we celebrate our Juneteenth. We came together to do a GPR because we wanted to see if there was any remains there. And we brought social workers and therapists in case we found anything that day to make sure that community members were good. So my question is, when a burial ground is discovered, will it be demarcated, or otherwise, how do we continue to preserve that space for generations to come? Because they were going to build another housing site. It was set up for housing. And we were like, not on our ancestors' bones. We cannot do that. So community was up in raw. At the time I was a candidate, and I was also an educator that walked by that site for 22 years to go and teach New York City public schools and never knew or had a clue that this was one of the African burial grounds in the city. And so now I've been gifted by the ancestors to memorialize and do right by them. So we want to make sure that how do we maintain them when we find others? How do we also have funding, right? Everything takes place with money. I don't care what we say. Everything has to move with money. So how do we continue to memorialize them as we're rediscovering them? Because they were here. Everybody just glossed over it like it never happened. How do we continue to memorialize them as we find them? How do we put funding to make sure the council is also funding this? This goes hand in hand with money. I did go visit Sankofa in East New York, and that's what inspired the work to do with parks. I think LPC, it should be interagency conversations, not just one. It should be LPC, DCLA, whoever else can come in, even New York City Public Schools. These things should be in New York City Public Schools history books. It should not be erased as much as erasure is happening. And how do, you guys are the expert, how do someone like me lead this work? It's been a lot. It weighs a lot on my heart. So how do I lead this work and do right?
I think
It's long term, and as the African Burial Ground showed us, the power of the community in mobilizing and resisting what was attempted to be done is important. Sensitizing a growing number of our public members of the importance of that history and the contribution that has been made by our ancestors is important. So through education, through public mobilization, then legislation can come into play, but the public has to be empowered and recognize that they have power in mobilizing support for that sort of endeavor.
I have community support. Thank God for that. I have the community support, but we want to make sure as the council that we're doing so much more.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing so far, I feel like, is how most of these projects start. But I do think there are some good frameworks, like we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
There are a lot of places that we can look for people using different methods and how they're going about it. So, for example, there's the Black Cemetery Network that offers a lot of resources online. There's also, like, so for example, I live part of the year in Maryland now. Maryland State has been doing some really interesting things around protecting Black cemeteries. Not that I don't know what happened with this, but a few years ago, the federal government had set aside $3 million, which isn't much, through the National Park Service that was supposed to go to, they would give out grants to people who were trying to preserve Black cemeteries. But I don't know that it ever materialized, because that's the other thing, is thinking, you know, more broadly with federal legislation too. But yeah, it does take money, and I feel like a lot of what I see is like real, like, grassroots efforts, unless we can get, you know, folks to buy in who are, you know, working with the cities or states that we are and have resources. Because it's like you're asking a question that I think a lot of us are still struggling with constantly in these places, because it is so expensive, and you're somewhere like New York City where we have to balance the needs of living people with how we treat our ancestors, and that's never straightforward. And I think even, you know, your example was really great, because some other cemeteries, the descendant communities have chosen to treat differently. So I think it's really a case by case sort of thing. But long term, I mean, I think for most of us, we think like legislation or something, some sort of public trust, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah.
And in terms of kind of getting it started, I think as Asia said, every site is different. There's no cookie cutter approach. So it really kind of has to be a hyper local, born out of the community and out of the community conversation and what they want. Not every cemetery has had the same history. Not every cemetery is going to be treated the same moving forward according to the community's wishes. So really just, it starts with just listening. And I would, as for the funding part, I don't think it's a coincidence that all of the sites we've talked about that have been documented by archaeologists are all on city-owned property.
Yeah.
I think the struggle with private private land owner rights are very strong, and it's hard to to kind of find ways to. It's very rare where a private landowner is willing to engage in this sort of work.
Yeah,
so
because
that's
they,
part
of course. Go ahead.
One thing I would just quickly add in terms of legislation, there is federal legislation to protect indigenous burial grounds around the country. That was passed in 1990, but no such comparable act exists for the protection of Black burial grounds. There is nothing prohibiting a city council from passing such a law,
Right.
but it would entail a lot of community engagement based on what Dr. Mead was saying about there's a lot of diversity in terms of how these burial grounds were constructed and what community needs might be. But legislation is lacking that has the teeth to protect these sites. And many of our colleagues in the field have called for such legislation over the years.
That's why we're here today, and that's why I'm so grateful to Chair Williams for entertaining when I said we need to do this, because this is what's happening across the city as Harlem, the Bronx, Staten Island. They're showing up. How do we show up for them as well and to preserve them and maintain them? What do you have a reasonable time frame for development and implementation of a planned survey? Where does that live? How do we do a survey, identify unmarked enslaved African burial sites? I know there's no timeline. I know it's as they come along. So lately, it's been how they're showing up, but we're showing up for them as well.
By survey, do you mean the map that the bill is proposing?
The map. How do we add more to it, and how do
Yeah.
we continue to build it? You have the foundation, so we just need to continue to build on it.
Yeah, I would say just it's continued research. I often say, or said when I was doing my dissertation, the number of cemeteries I discovered by accident was not small. You just stumble through records and you find an offhand reference. So it's really just charging historians and archaeologists and scholars with paying more attention and looking for those kind of just offhand references and diaries and property records, things that just make casual references to a cemetery that can then be the jumping off point for more research. So that I think is the starting point, because otherwise there's the same resources for preserved cemeteries don't exist for the ones that were redeveloped.
So we're building this from scratch.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that idea. So we should have historians, archaeologists, and
Archivists and genealogists.
Genealogists should also be on part of that team. Are we training the next generation of scholars for that type of work and making sure that there's enough representation in that field as well?
Excellent question. I try desperately, but I mean, archaeology, which in the United States falls under anthropology, is a very anti-Black discipline. In fact, the position I took was so that I could go into Black studies rather than stay in anthropology. So there's more of us with like the Society for Black Archaeologists and stuff, but it's that is a struggle that has been going on for well before me, for decades, trying to get more Black students into these fields. And also, I mean, part of the struggle is that I'm often arguing against science, with a capital S, wherein to many people, many of my colleagues, they still, if they were given the choice, would, excavate a cemetery for fun, for science, for knowledge. So that's a much bigger question, I would say. I don't know, Matt, you're a professor too, so, oh, I'm sorry.
I think locally there are, of course, success stories, and I fully agree with Dr. Lanz in terms of the climate and inheritance of our discipline. Thankfully, in New York, we do have a successful pipeline of students of African descent who are eager and passionate about this work. Several come to us not knowing about any of this history and leave our halls of CUNY institutions wanting to pursue a master's degree or a PhD to become the next generation that can lead this charge. So there are folks out there. We just need to give them the task.
I need to meet them. I'm also the higher education chair in the New York City Council, so I need to create that pipeline to make sure that representation does matter as we discover these. How many members do you have in your society?
I just counted them the other day. Oh gosh, it's like 280.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's grown significantly when we first started. There's a handful right now. When we have the meetings, the rooms are packed right now. So.
The society was
Until-
only founded in 2011.
Yeah.
2011?
Yeah.
Wow. So we have a lot of work to
We have,
do.
a lot of this, we have made a lot of inroads, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, we do.
When I teach Seneca Village, I try to make it engaging, have students become archaeologists. So rather than tell them about history, we give them primary source documents so they actually work with actual documents and see how history is documented, how they can tell a story through the documents that they are looking at. And every time they analyze it, I always see something different because the perspectives is always different. So most students come with an intention to pursue a certain career, but by showing them the possibility of different pathways, it gives them a chance to think of alternative career paths. My own example, I came to study architecture. I did a couple of years, and then with the rediscovery of African burial ground, I shifted from architecture to archaeology. So
We need that shift. In your testimony, you talked about Central Park as one of the first towns. Is there any marking or celebration of the community that lived there that was driven out through eminent domain?
There are plaques in place. The Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village, Community Board 10, and the Central Park Conservancy work together to install plaques commemorating the site. So there are plaques denotating where certain individuals live, where cemeteries are located. But these are temporary. They have done work to extend the time that they're there. More work needs to be done in looking at how technology can be used so that when somebody maybe passes through the area by using the QR codes, you can get more information that is beyond what is on a plaque.
That it was a thriving community,
Yes,
and they were
yes.
driven out through eminent domain to build a park. I'm sure a lot of folks don't know that. Exactly. So, Chair, I'm going to pass it over to you, and then we'll.
Thank you. Just one final question, and it really does sort of dovetail kind of out of what Councilmember Joseph said. Just as a council, any thoughts on what our role should continue to be in supporting future work in this area, or in supporting the work that has already been done? You know, just from this hearing, what I'm hearing is that is, you know, the bill is relegated to enslaved folks, but that we might want to expand it. So just thinking about like future work or current work, how can we as a council support that? What do you think our roles can be? And I know that is a big question. So I also say that oftentimes real work happens after the hearing. So I do look forward to hopefully connecting with you all after the hearing as well.
I guess helping to, if they don't already exist in areas where we do have some documentation of these types of burial sites, helping community groups form that you know, can help build the education and engagement component. A lot of the best work that's been happening in recent years has been the product of community involvement and community engagement, and communities pushing city government, pushing politicians to get sites investigated, to fund this type of work. So I think it's really just supporting it at the community level, finding the people in those areas who want to do this work, who may not know that there's a cemetery in their backyard, and helping nurture that and grow those community groups, because that does seem to be the primary driver of the successful documentation and you know, awareness campaigns of a lot of the sites around the city.
Well, thank you so much for coming and for traveling from afar, even though New York City is home. We appreciate you very much. And again, I know this will not be the last time we engage with you. And again, thank you so much for your personal interest in these topics, for doing the work that obviously needs to be done, often is not being done and overlooked. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. Our wonderful friends at DCLA, thank you so much for coming and being here and listening to the expert panel. Although I've already read ahead in your testimony, and even the expert panel mentioned that another agency might be better equipped, we're still very excited to see you. And I will now turn it to committee counsel to swear you in.
Good afternoon. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you. You may begin your testimony.
Sitting up here, I feel totally at a disadvantage. I just traveled from across the street, so um, it's good to be here and it's good to see familiar faces. I'm going to read my testimony first and then take some questions. Good afternoon, Deputy Speaker Williams and members of the committee. I am Alton Murray, Deputy Commissioner of the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. I'm here to testify in regards to today's topic, commemorating Juneteenth and honoring African burial sites of formerly enslaved African American. Juneteenth was made an official holiday in 2021. It was, for the past 156 years, after the last enslaved people were learned of their emancipation after the Civil War. It took a generation of advocacy for this historic milestone to be more broadly recognized. But 5 years on, we New Yorkers have embraced the opportunity to celebrate, reflect, and come together to continue the unending work of imagining a more inclusive and just society. The Department of Cultural Affairs is proud to support a wide range of organizations whose programming in honor of Juneteenth is as diverse as our city cultural sector. Our grantees bring in performances, workshop, exhibitions, and other community-driven programming for New Yorkers to engage. I'll give you a few examples. The Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning, also known as JCAL, will commemorate Juneteenth with art and film programming that examines the continuing journey towards liberation. JCAL Juneteenth programming will unfold across its campus and is free and open to the public. Black Spectrum Television will present theatrical programming examining the history and long significance of Juneteenth through dramatic performances and community dialogue. Studio Museum in Harlem will mark Juneteenth with a full day of workshops, gallery conversation, performances, and healing-centered programming rooted in Black artistic expressions and community care. Snug Harbor Cultural Center and Botanical Gardens and the Staten Island Community Alliance will present the 6th annual Juneteenth Freedom Festival. This day celebration of food, music, and culture is a meaningful way to commemorate and honor the end of slavery in the United States while bringing the community together. Weeksville Heritage Center will commemorate Juneteenth with liberation-centered talks, archival storytelling, performances, food vendors, and community gathering located on the site of the nation's first free Black community. Weeksville celebration foregrounds Black history, resilience, and cultural memory. The New York Botanical Garden will present programs exploring Black ecology, foodways, healing gardens, and storytelling tradition. The celebration connects environmental education with the stories and cultural practices of the African diaspora. There are many, many more listed in our written testimony. I encourage you to continue to read it. But in the interest of time, I would like to talk about our partners in parks. Our partners in New York City Parks and New York City Tourism also have a robust list of programming happening across the city. We're proud to support, in partnership with the New York City Council, this broad range of cultural activities and programming honoring this year's Juneteenth holiday. I'd also like to note that many organizations, especially Black-led organizations, have been celebrating Juneteenth in our city for many years before it became a federal holiday. This is another example of the groups we support leading the way when it comes to programming that is rooted and accountable to our communities. Regarding the proposed legislation, we thank you for highlighting the urgent need to think deeply about how we honor burial sites of formerly enslaved African American in our city. DCLA offices are just around the corner from the African Burial Ground National Monument in Lower Manhattan. This marks the site where upwards of 15,000 intact remains of enslaved and free Africans who lived and worked in New York were found during the construction of a federal building. Through our Percent for Art program, DCLA commissioned artist Lorenzo Pace Soaring, Triumph of the Human Spirit, just a few steps away in Foley Square, to honor and draw attention to this important site. In Harlem, we are supporting the efforts of the New York City Economic Development Corporation to commission a permanent monument and cultural space honoring an African burial ground founded under a longtime MTA bus depot. In Brooklyn, the Flatbush African Burial Ground was in use from 17th to 19th century. After community members advocate for the site to be preserved as open space, it was transferred from HPD to NYC and NYC Parks in 2022, with funding supported from the council and in close consultation with the local community. NYC Parks is undertaking a capital project to design and build a park space that commemorates and honors the site's history. The written testimony submitted today from Landmark Preservation Committee includes information on a number of other burial grounds that are preserved and honored across the city. Collectively, these sites tell the stories of the members of the African diaspora who came to our city, often in bondage, who laid the foundation for a flourishing Black culture that defines so many parts of our city today. As noted in our written testimony of our colleagues at Landmark Preservation Commission, the tragic national pattern of disregard for African American burial grounds left most uncounted, unprotected, and rarely documented on the maps. LPC raised another valid concern, such as the risk of looting and vandalism that may result from public disclosure of unmarked archaeological sites. This work should only be undertaken in consultation with descendants community, who in some cases may find disclosure appropriate, or in other cases prefer to keep the location of the site private to protect it. While we share your commitment to honoring the legacy of African ancestors who lived and died here, DCLA is likely not the best agency to lead this work. We are primarily a funding agency, and we do not have the in-out expertise or resources to oversee this kind of historical landmark assessment with the care and precision it deserves and demands. But as we have with other African burial sites, we would be honored to work in commission with a commemorative monument and artwork when the sites are identified and capital project initiated, and more broadly to support these efforts in collaboration with our grantees who have relevant expertise. We look forward to further conversation about the best way to move, effective way to accomplish our shared goals for more fully honoring and recognizing these sites. And the weeks leading up to Juneteenth offer an ideal opportunity to have this important conversation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Actually, Dr. Mead, can you come back? Because I have a question for you. We did see the, thank you. We'll continue to look at LPC's testimony. It came in today? Yeah,
Doing
it came in
okay.
today, so we didn't have time to look at it ahead, but I know they have a whole section on looting and site disturbance. Do you think that is a valid concern?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
So LPC, the Landmarks Preservation Commission, submitted written testimony, and I know Commissioner Murray just mentioned this as well, that they believe that if we publicize where some of these unmarked sites are, that it may result in looting and vandalism. So I just wanted to know from your expertise if you think that is a valid concern.
In some cases, absolutely, and that's always a concern in archaeology, and for a lot of our environmental review work, we do conceal the locations of archaeological sensitivity for anywhere where people can actually access, and someone couldn't go into Central Park and dig, sure. In other places, it's not likely. Sites that are under pavement, under buildings, then there's no real risk of that. Someone would have to get a backhoe out there, and that would be a very different story. So, in some cases, absolutely yes, that is correct, but not all.
Okay, thank you so much. Commissioner, a question that the bill sponsor had, she wanted to know if her bill should explicitly authorize contracts and grants. I know you mentioned you're primarily a funding agency, so she was interested in knowing if the bill should be amended to explicitly authorize contracts and grants.
It's not something we have discussed internally, and I can't see why it wouldn't be. We do have a peer review process, so grants are not evaluated internally. We have over 250 community members who are experts in arts and culture, not so much in heritage, who evaluate the proposals and make the determination of how the grants are funded.
Another question about funding. Should New York City create a permanent cemetery maintenance fund modeled after Virginia's African American Cemeteries Fund?
We haven't given it much thought, and we are open to continue this discussion.
Okay. You have questions? Councilmember Joseph.
Because we are going to need to, once we memorialize, for example, the Flatbush African Burial Ground, we will need some type of maintenance. How do we maintain and upkeep them so they are, not dilapidated and run down after a while?
The sites that we have installed public art, we do build in an instances maintenance fund, because every specific site will have different challenges. To have a conversation that is so hypothetical that we can't really, your site may not require a public art monument. You may decide to go in another direction. So it depends on each project to have specific challenges that we would have to look at individually.
Okay. And you mentioned in your testimony that the African burial grounds should go to LPC and not DCLA.
One of the experts mentioned that also as a possibility.
Right, correct.
We are not identifying any. This is such a big conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What we would really love to do is sit down and have a more thoughtful approach to this. We are not fully endorsing any one particular agency. It should be a collaborative process, but we don't think that the way we are structured and our expertise are equipped to manage and conduct and orchestrate this project, this initiative.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. It's probably pretty broad, and then I'll go more micro.
Yes.
Like, in preparation for hearings,
Yes.
like, what is the process? Because, like, when I hear you say that you haven't put any thought into it, it makes me concerned that there was no, like, due diligence and prep for the hearing. And I know sometimes we don't send the questions, which is something that I'll continue to remind our collective staff to do, because I do believe that it should be a fair exchange. Like, I expect you to have answers, but I know sometimes in order for you to have answers, like, we in turn probably need to share the questions. I don't know if that was the case. That's fine. If it wasn't, we didn't send the questions. Okay, well that I will have a conversation internally about that. But moving along.
No, but I would like to address that. It's not that this is such a big subject, and it's important to me as an African American that it's done right. But we cannot come prepared for a big discussion about something so big that we don't have the expertise to discuss in prep for a hearing. We need archaeologists and genealogists and all these people to be in the conversation. So that's why I said we're not prepared to have that big discussion.
Okay, thank you. Have you spoken to other agencies about this bill? I know you said you aren't endorsing one particular agency. Have you had any discussions in preparation for the hearing?
Yes,
with
we have
what
multi-agency.
agencies?
We talk to landmarks, preservation. We talk to parks.
Okay. Um, what has DCLA done to encourage Juneteenth commemorations either by cultural organizations that it funds or by community groups?
We continue to be an engaging partner in the Juneteenth initiatives. Referring back to testimony, I just read a few organizations that we support that are doing Juneteenth work, and the list is robust, and I encourage you to read again. But we are a passionate supporter of the Juneteenth initiative, and we continue to look for opportunities to fund more grantees. With the new addition of $10 million added to the DCLA budget, we will be out there promoting opportunities for organizations who are very, very versed in doing this work to submit proposal for funding. And we encourage you to be a partner in talking to your community organizations who are doing this work to apply for a DCLA funded grant. We leave the work up to the experts who are doing it, and so we support them with funding.
How are, I know this is, you say this is a big topic, so maybe this should be a part 2, but how are Juneteenth programming and burial site recognition connected as part of a coherent commemorative framework rather than treated as a separate effort? You see how I also questioned that this work should not just live in one agency, that it should be interagency.
Okay.
There should be parks, it should be DCLA, it should be LPC. Everybody will play their role. You'll carry the cultural part. They'll carry the preservation part. So each of these agencies will play a role.
Absolutely. So repeat the question.
Chair Williams, I think we need to have a roundtable. How are Juneteenth programming and burial site recognition connected as part of a coherent commemorative framework rather than treated as separate efforts?
So in DCLA, there is no initiative to make it a coherent commemorative experience. We do promote and support cultural organizations. We encourage our commissioners in the past have attended and highlighted these programs. And so we continue to be a very passionate funder. We encourage organizations to let us know when they have events so we can uplift it. Because all of these are independent organizations doing independent work, it would be not a big discussion to have to how do we encourage all of these organizations to collaborate, to exchange information and work. So currently, it's not a focus of the agency. What we try to encourage is more funding, more support to the community.
Related but unrelated, the Freedom Trail Task Force. So when we passed our Juneteenth package of bills, that was one of the bills. The bill didn't compel a particular agency to provide oversight. And so I am just inquiring if you are aware of this task force and if you can share any updates and status.
I'm not in a position to share any updates now.
But are you aware of the task force?
I am aware of it, but I do not have any updates I can share with you.
Is your agency involved in it? Because I know the bill.
We're involved in the conversation, yes.
Do you know what other agencies
I do not right now, no.
Okay.
I'm not personally involved, but I can get back to you with that info.
Do you know who is managing that?
I do not right now. I can get back to you and let you know.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I will work on my end. I don't know why we have this policy where we don't send you stuff in advance. So I'm going on record and saying that I do not like that because I want you to come to the hearing with answers. But again, I recognize that if you don't have the questions, it's hard to produce answers. So I appreciate you being here. And like I said, I'm committed to figuring out internally how, at the very least in my committee, we can share questions in advance. Because I think this is probably like the second time that I've had a hearing with DCLA, and it doesn't seem like you all have answers or have put any real thought into preparing for my hearing. But I appreciate you very much, and hopefully we can have a real conversation offline with respective agencies that would also, to your earlier point about you did have some conversations, might be good agencies to connect with around this topic.
I do appreciate your perspective, but I'd also like to reiterate that we are a funding agency. We fund nonprofits organizations. We want to be a contributing partner to this conversation. And as a person of color, an African American man, I think it should not be decided in such a small amount of time. There should be more collaboration, more engagement. We are, DCLA, we are really passionate about this issue. We want to be a thought partner in this. We want our expertise to be valued. So when we come to the table and we present ideas, they're ideas with which we have lived with, we've thought through them, and it fits within our experts. We're great at funding, we're great at managing capital projects and giving our nonprofit partners the knowledge they need, but this particular heritage topic needs to be well thought out and addressed in a more deliberate way. Thank you for your time.
I agree with you, and I don't think that I'm expecting the agency to come to a hearing with all of the answers, but I do expect that the agency come to the hearing with a pathway as to how they could potentially implement something of this nature and or provide a more robust reason as to why it might be challenging. And perhaps we should have, did we invite LPC? Okay, so perhaps we should have invited LPC or other agencies, because I do acknowledge that LPC's testimony is a little bit more robust on the issue of the bill, but we didn't call them, so maybe we should have called them. Happy to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, we champion funding.
Mhm.
I imagine LPC champion heritage work. So maybe there is a path forward with some funding
Maybe
and heritage work
perhaps we
and
should have called
parks
them.
and education. We all can get together and have a real meaningful, robust conversation so that all these sites can be identified and properly commemorated, hopefully with a really, really amazing public art installment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I know we have a Zoom panel of libraries. I will now call on the panel from libraries, Edwin, Elizabeth, and Chris.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Edwin Maxwell, and I'm the Chief Librarian of the Brooklyn Public Library. So thank you, Speaker Menon, Deputy Speaker Dr. Williams, and especially Councilmember Chris Banks for his partnership and leadership on the New Lots Library project. I have submitted my full testimony for your review, but there's a couple of things I just want to touch base on. Like many others have said, this project is deeply personal to me. Earlier in my career, I served as the branch manager of the New Lots Library, and I've spent years working alongside that community who deserves and they are excited about this state-of-the-art library. But before it was a library project, as Councilmember Banks said earlier, we have to remember that this is a sacred space. The East New York African burial ground is the resting place of free and enslaved Africans buried generations ago beneath Sankofa Park and beneath the site that will be the new library. For years, that history lived mostly in fragments and community memory until local leaders Catherine Green and Eleanor Pickney helped bring it to full light through their research, advocacy, and persistence. Over the last 3 years, Brooklyn Public Library has engaged deeply with the community, and the message that we heard was clear. We have to honor the past while also celebrating the vibrant present and future of East New York. We also work closely with community members to develop procedures for the respectful treatment of any remains that could potentially be discovered during construction. The design team, Mass Design Group, Marble Fairbanks, and Elizabeth Kennedy Landscape Architect approached this work with tremendous care and thoughtfulness. There are many meaningful elements throughout the design, but one of my favorites is the veil that runs from the building and lifts toward the entrance, symbolizing the way community leaders lifted the veil on the site's history and brought it into the public view. Brooklyn Public Library is honored to steward this work, and I look forward to welcoming you all at the ribbon cutting in just a few years so you can experience the beauty and meaningfulness of this space firsthand. Thank you.
Chris, followed by Elizabeth.
Hey everyone. My name is, thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of this bill. My name is Chris Hardy. I'm a design director at MASS, a nonprofit architecture firm, which stands for Model of Architecture Serving Society. Our work spans contexts, geographies, and building types, but often focuses on reckoning with systemic erasure. By creating space that centers memory in the public realm and therefore raising public consciousness, we can contribute to healing on community and national scales. We had the privilege and pleasure to work towards that goal with our many project partners on the New Lots branch. The Brooklyn Public Library, collaboration with so many community voices, has led with commitment to this project's acknowledgement of the history of the East New York African Burial Ground. The branch will be located further west, respecting the burial ground, and Remembrance Plaza will unify between the library and the Sankofa Park sites, an established space for reverence. All of the contributions that have been instrumental in getting the project to this stage, and is an example of the hard work and dedication that's required to do this, to do projects like this. It is our hope that this project can serve as an opportunity for collective learning, reinforcing the mission of the library, a place to reconcile and a place to celebrate. It's our hope that honoring this burial ground is but a step on a journey, one that's much bigger than any one project. It's an opportunity for us to curate our collective future. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Good afternoon. I hope I'm in room one, and I will be brief. My name is Elizabeth Kennedy. The landscape architecture firm that bears my name has been involved in the design commemoration of the enslaved African burial ground at New Lots, the enslaved African burial ground at Inwood, and the enslaved African burial ground on the banks of the Collect Pond, which is also known as the African Burial Ground National Monument. We were also considered for the work to commemorate the enslaved African burial ground within Van Cortlandt Park, but we didn't get that job. While I want to assure you that we do not specialize solely in enslavement narratives, as other experts have testified, unrecognized sites of enslaved and free African burials are everywhere. The writer Shane White and painter Francis Guy attest to the ubiquity of enslavement in the 18th century Hudson Valley and throughout Long Island, and the banality of its cruelty. Banality that Hannah Arendt described as the ordinariness of evil when referring to the Holocaust. This banality lies at the heart of this cultural erasure. Burial grounds of enslaved and free Africans are so frequently found within the footprint of public land, parks, schoolyards, bus depots, municipal parking lots, that their situation interrogates the city's history of land stewardship. And while these grounds share common threads in purpose, each has a backstory that renders it unique. So how can the commitment of organizations like the Brooklyn Public Library support this resolution? Community institutions like libraries are also everywhere. Their approach to public engagement can confront general ignorance of and indifference to complex narratives of place and identity through design. Also, libraries inherently convey joy, a central aspect of African survival in enslavement and freedom. Like the Smithsonian Institution, libraries disseminate knowledge into the world. The design of the New Lots branch architecture and landscape does exactly that, demonstrating through its melding of shelter and ecology into a sanctuary of an urban hush harbor how local civic spaces may intertwine mission with highly local spatial and sociocultural histories to situate library arts firmly within a greater context of sacred space. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Or what am I doing?
I think that was it for the.
That was it for online for now. Okay, back to in person.
So now we can start the.
I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms if you have not already done so, and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearing topic, commemorating Juneteenth and honoring burial sites of formerly enslaved African Americans. We will hear all in-person testimony first, and then turn to testimony on Zoom. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. I will now call the first panel from the public. They already spoke. Well, so we see that we have the library folks online raising their hands, Edwin and Chris. I don't know if this is an old hand. Chris, I think you're unmuted. Okay. So moving along to our in-person testimony, we will call Judith, Heather, and Samantha. Yeah, Samantha Bernadine. Oh, she left. Okay. That happens. Our hearings take forever. Oh. Oh, DJ McDonald. Did DJ McDonald also leave?
Okay.
Oh.
So then that's our full.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Dr. Williams and honorable members of the New York City Council. My name is Judith Insel, and I'm the Executive Director of the Bronx Arts Ensemble. On June 19th, from 4 to 8 p.m., the Arts Ensemble and Van Cortlandt Park Alliance will present our 6th annual collaborative Juneteenth event honoring the enslaved African burial ground located in Van Cortlandt Park, as well as all enslaved African American people who have helped build our great city. Together, our two Bronx cultural institutions have presented Juneteenth events since 2021, providing attendees with spiritually moving content and encouraging them to reflect on Juneteenth and the burial ground's historical significance. With an estimated 1,000 people to attend this year's event, we have decided to expand to a full-fledged festival format, featuring multiple locations in the park with 4 hours of events planned, ranging from an African drumming presentation, a libation ceremony, a New Orleans-style second line, and performances by the Bronx Arts Ensemble. This year's celebration is significant. It will include the unveiling of design ideas for a reimagined enslaved African burial ground. The general public will view the work of 3 design guide teams who are part of a collaborative of architects, designers, and community members who have spent the past 2 years developing ways to respectfully honor the enslaved African legacy in the park. This reimagined design will memorialize the people who lived, worked, and ultimately died on the Bronx plantation that is now parkland. Many New Yorkers have no idea that our city was built on the backs of enslaved Black and Indigenous people. At a time when our country is erasing painful history out of convenience and fear, our great city has the opportunity to elevate the history and contributions of Black Americans instead of hiding from the truth. Bronx Arts Ensemble and Van Cortlandt Park Alliance applaud the City Council's efforts to support a policy to broaden awareness of Juneteenth and honor the burial sites of enslaved African Americans in our city. We hope this is just the beginning of a wave of financial support to carry out this important work. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Williams and members of the committee. My name is Heather Quinlan. I am a filmmaker, historian, and executive director of the Northeast Corridor Freedom Network, and here today to testify in support of Intro 220, what was originally called the Benjamin Prine Act. Benjamin Prine, who I have a photo of right here, was born enslaved on Staten Island in the late 1700s. He later became a well-known Staten Islander whose obituary appeared in newspapers across the country, from the New York Times to the Chicago Tribune to the Iowa Gazette, when he died in 1900 at more than 100 years old. According to an obituary at the Elmira Star-Gazette, quote, his stories of historical events were the talk of Staten Island, end quote. Benjamin Prine was buried at Cherry Lane Cemetery, an African-American burial ground seized in 1954 for unpaid taxes and paved over for commercial development. The location of Mr. Prine's remains, as well as those of the estimated hundreds buried there, many of them babies and children, is unknown. Over the last several years researching Cherry Lane for my documentary, American Graveyard, I've learned how fragile these histories are. For many African-American families, burial grounds are the only surviving, or among the only surviving links to the past, because so many records were fragmented, lost, or erased, or indeed didn't exist in the first place. Benjamin Prine's descendants, who lived less than a mile from where he was buried, had never heard of him, even though members of their own family had once served on the cemetery board and they were alive when the cemetery existed. This is what erasure looks like. This legislation matters because there are still burial grounds across New York City that remain unmarked, undocumented, and vulnerable to be lost again. This act gives us the opportunity not only to identify these sites, but to restore memory, dignity, and historical continuity. I have also submitted written testimony for the record, including a 1908 municipal tax roll identifying Cherry Lane as exempt, alongside a later court judgment that effectively claimed no cemetery existed there. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question.
So earlier I had asked a question around Juneteenth and African burial grounds being celebrated together, but not as a separate celebration. What's your thought on that?
I think that's a very important thing to happen throughout the city. Ever since 2021, when Van Cortlandt Park Alliance came to the Bronx Arts Ensemble and asked us to partner in a celebration of the lives of the people that they had discovered there on the parkland, it was very clear that we needed to be a part of this initiative moving forward. Each year, our celebration has grown by at least 100 to 200 people a year. So we have people coming from all over the city, not just the Bronx. We also get people who come from Westchester. It's one of the most incredibly moving things that Bronx Arts Ensemble does all year long. To experience it, particularly for myself as an African-American person, to have people come who we have a plaque at the burial ground, who come, they have special moments there. They cry, they scream out in joy, they dance. Every single emotion you can imagine happens that day. And our Juneteenth celebration just would not be the same without actually connecting it to the enslaved people who are right there. It takes on a totally different meaning. And we celebrate them, and we celebrate the lives and the work that they did there in one of the largest parks in New York City, there would be no space there without what they did to create it. So I do believe that it takes on a higher elevated meaning when you put Juneteenth together with the African burial grounds around the city.
Thank you. Is there a marker around Cherry Lane, or is anyone trying to preserve what's happening? Can you give us an update?
That's a very good question. Santander Bank, which is a tenant on the property, took it upon themselves to fund a boulder and plaque and a memorial garden that they pay for. The landlord does not want any other recognition. His belief is we've given you a boulder, so that's it. I would love to think of this as a case study for how, if we do not get permission to be on the actual property, and that could take a long time to do, and I believe this has been done in Bethesda, to do a ground penetrating radar survey on the perimeter, because I actually think a lot of the remains don't adhere to the boundaries, right? So I do think that there would be remains found on the streets and on the sidewalks that the descendants, who I am here on behalf of as well, would really love to have that kind of closure. And so that is what we're looking for right now.
Maybe there's a grant out there to help you with the GPR.
Yes, indeed, and I hope there is, because I think we do have the okay from the Department of Transportation. It's just a matter of getting someone out there to really actually do the work. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you both.
Okay, final panel on Zoom, Lucy, Z, and Cheryl.
You may begin.
The following witnesses were also signed up to testify remotely. I've read the list. And if any of you are online or here in person, please raise your hand. I just want to note that this concludes our in-person portion of our public testimony, and we will move to remote public testimony. And again, if you're testifying remotely, please listen for your name. I already called your name. But once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you. You may then start your testimony once the sergeant at arms sets the clock and cues you to begin. So we can start with Cheryl.
You may begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Deputy Speaker Dr. Williams, and committee members for hearing my testimony. And thank you, City Council, for your leadership regarding the fiscal year 27 budget for arts and culture. We are grateful for your support and for your belief in what we do. I am Cheryl Warfield, a professional opera singer and founder and artistic director of More Opera, a community-based nonprofit vocal arts organization blazing a trail in culturally responsive musical programming and arts education in New York City. I testify today regarding Juneteenth, our country's most recent federal holiday. It is truly an American holiday, and it is for and about all of us. My small budget not-for-profit organization makes a big impact in underserved and under-resourced communities in the Bronx, Manhattan, and as of fiscal year 2026 in Queens. We train members of the community, all ages, backgrounds, and levels of musical training to participate in community choruses singing with our professional company members. Since 2022, we have celebrated Juneteenth with concerts that are free and open to the general public. Our concerts are vocal concerts with a historical narrative focusing on the music and the story behind Juneteenth for preservation purposes. And we draw parallels to colonialism and other forms of oppression to show how the themes of resilience and strength and the desire for freedom are universal. This year we will present 10 Juneteenth concerts throughout 3 boroughs.
Time expired.
Thank you very much, and I will submit the rest of my testimony.
Thank you. The next person is Z.
You may begin.
Okay, I believe this concludes our hearing. Okay. If there's anyone else present in the room who has not had the opportunity to testify but wishes to do so, please raise your hand. Seeing no one who wishes to testify, I would like to note that members of the public who are not able to testify can submit written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Thank you so much to our Sergeant at Arms. This hearing is adjourned.